All right. So today I get the honor of talking to Ted. We were just talking a little bit, and his main forte would be reverse, if you will, reverse engineering in regards to website SEO, not necessarily GMB SEO, but website SEO. So if you have questions or anything whatsoever, make sure you comment, post a comment below, and I'll make sure to get those in. And we can go ahead and get started. So let's talk a little bit more about this reverse engineering. So what do you mean, first off, when you're talking about reverse engineering?
Well, for me, I'm trying to figure out just fundamental truths about Google's web algorithm. So your organic web search. And the first thing to keep in mind is that Google is a meta search engine. It's actually several different search engines that's blending the results for your keyword together. So people are commonly familiar with the local search, the map pack, the web organic results. It's also an ad search engine, your keyword search for relevant ads. It's a shopping search engine. It's an information database with the knowledge graph. There's a lot in there. It's news search, it's image search. So Google has these different engines with different algorithms, and it blends them all into what you see as the Google search result page. My area of expertise is just with that organic web search component. So you'd really be talking about different algorithms once you go to a different part of that meta blend. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
And I got my start with computer programming at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois. This was way back in the early 90s.
Yep.
I had the office across the hall from Mark Andreessen. Many old timers like me would remember NCSA Mosaic. Mark Andreesen authored that first graphical web browser. He later went on to do Netscape. I went into software engineering, and I eventually made my way into online retail, and kind of predates a lot of SEO. And, as a matter of necessity, I took on the engineering challenge of making sure that our websites perform in search engines because we saw it was driving revenue. And through that, I started developing tools and reports and things to do this early stage SEO. And I largely
So what are some of the tools that you've developed in regarding SEO? What's some of the major ones?
Well, what I'm known for today is Korra SEO software. But way back in the infancy, I had various problems of scale. Like there weren't all the tools we have today, and things like rank tracking were difficult. And there was early versions of software out there like Link Assistance Rank Tracker, which is pretty popular, but it had problems with scale. And one of the things we had as a large online retailer was 25,000 SKUs across 500 product categories. So basically, we were trying to SEO for 250,000 keywords.
Wow.
And just doing the rank tracking on that would take a whole month.
Yeah.
So we'd spend a month measuring it instead of implementing it. And so I'd build tools to change that, you know. And one of the things we stumbled across was this notion of testing. We had 15 stores, and we would take the one that sucked, you know, got poorest revenue, least traffic. That's our experiment site. And so I would run SEO tests on that smaller store. And if I found something that helped it rank better, I'd call that a win, and I'd move it over to the bigger stores.
Yeah.
And but oftentimes what would happen is I'd do some SEO on that smaller store, and it would do nothing most of the time. It just would be no change at all. Rarely it would be, moved down, and I'd undo it and it would go back, and that type of thing. But what that testing did, what that environment did, was it allowed me to fail, which is key to succeeding in SEO.
In SEO, definitely.
Because I was able to learn, and I was able to recognize successes, and then I could get into a pattern of only implementing successes where it mattered, which made me a wizard with my employer. They were blown away that quarter after quarter I could get double-digit growth, and I never fumbled. And well, I was fumbling all the time. I just wasn't fumbling where
you just knew not to implement that, and then you learned your lessons from it, and therefore you knew what to apply versus not what to apply, what you shouldn't apply.
Yeah, exactly. And this was a very large online retailer, had well over 300 employees and 1 million square foot fulfillment center, and it is like a really big, slow moving enterprise.
Yeah.
Kind of like a small Amazon is how I would look at it. And with that comes a lot of problems. The SEO can't deploy things on the website. There's a whole engineering team that does that. The SEO can't override the content choices. There's a whole team that does that. And so there's these real problems that ultimately, as the company grew, I was able to execute less and less SEO initiatives because I needed corporate buy-in. Yeah. So at the enterprise level, SEO gets tricky. And so I ended up having to make sure that what I asked the business to do, what I asked the engineers to do, were always going to win. I had to know. I had to have the information, because it's getting to a point where I could only ask for 4 or 5 changes a year to get them engineered and deployed
and agreed upon and everything.
Yeah. And that's really hard for an SEO. So those 5 things I ask for, they have to be the best 5 things.
Yeah, it's one of the most aggravating things. I've had people be like, will you work with another SEO at the same time? I'm like, nope. Because it's just too complicated. You got to know what they're doing versus what you're doing. Is what he's doing working, or is what I'm doing working? And don't go in there and screw up stuff I've already done. So I definitely understand that part.
Yeah, and so what I ended up doing was I started writing tools to measure things. So I said, okay, I gotta find the things that matter. I'll start writing these scripts. I'll go and measure the competition. I'll measure things that I think are factors. I'll make some spreadsheets. I'll plot some charts. I'll see what I can learn from the data. So I started, after about 17 years of doing this to great success, I started sharing some of my reports on Black Hat World. And people lost their mind. They're like, what tool did this? Yeah. And so I very quickly realized I have a product on my hand. And it became Korra SEO software. And are you able to see my shared screen?
I can actually pull it up. Let me go ahead and add that. There you go.
Okay. So this is the light version of that software. The full version can measure up to 2,050 different potential SEO factors. And I know that Google says they only have 200, but we don't know what they are. So whenever we find something that's arguably a factor, past, present, or future, and we can measure it, we'll put it in, and if it starts to correlate with rankings, it'll pop up on our radar.
Yep.
So we do that with thousands of potential factors, and we're basically using statistics to tease out which factors appear to influence the rankings. So we're trying to figure out what's contributing to the sort order. And it turns out that the math for doing that has been known for decades. It's very simple algebra and statistics. And so we do this math in the software to figure out which factors appear to matter. So the way it kind of works is we type in a keyword, and we'll pull up the search results for it, and then we'll check which websites we feel are competitors. So some we may feel are competition, some we may not, like large directories, things like that. And then this yellow one, that's the site we want recommendations for.
So that's the site you're, if you will, trying to get ranked.
Yeah, exactly. And then once we get it configured the way we like, localized to a country, near a city, state, specifically, all that stuff, then we hit get data, and it'll run for about 5 minutes to produce this report. It's got the same effect as like opening up 100 web browser tabs all at once, because it's going to go harvest all the information. And what that report looks like when it's done, there's a lot more to the full version of Korra, but the most important part of Korra is the roadmap. It's where you want to spend, probably 95% of your time. And this is the roadmap. It tells you the factors, and based on the competitors you picked, it tells you how much more of each factor you need to be above average for that group of competitors, or exactly how much you need to take the lead in that factor.
So about how much you need to equal them or to take over.
Yeah. So if you just wanted to be above average in the group, so minor tuning, then you'd go for the smaller, easy number. But if you're trying to go for the gold, you try to take the lead.
Always going for the gold.
And then what I like to tell people to do is just to kind of look for patterns. If you see a lot of things around the title, maybe it's time to tune the title, fix those deficits. If you see a lot of things around headings, let's do a pass and fix the headings. But generally only do like 5 to 10 at a time. You don't want to take on the whole list all at once.
Whole shebang and do it all at once and get burnout either.
Well, you'll trigger a Google dance, and it'll steer your client.
Call it the Google dance or the Google yo-yo effect. Everybody always asks about, what do I mean by that? It's up and down, when you do too much at once.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of this, this reporting, we're able to dial in exactly the differences between your web page and your higher ranking competitors. We can tell you exactly how you're different. And so, that's a very powerful tool, but it gave us a unique capability to reverse engineer Google's algorithm. So let me pull up another display here.
I really like this stuff.
So this little chart in the corner up here, this is the May core update.
Yep.
Right? And what drives me nuts about core updates, the Google core updates, is Google will announce them, and then literally like 6 days later, everybody's like, okay, it's over.
Panicking.
It's done. Yeah. Well, they're panicking, but they also call the update over.
Yeah, and it's not.
They're not. these core updates, they last, the January core update lasted 27 days. The May core update was 33 days. And actually the passage indexing update, it's looking like it's approaching like 45 days now.
Yep.
And that's what we have. The big graph is the passage indexing one.
Yep.
But the thing to note is that at the beginning of these updates, there's this baseline activity, and these lines are different weather services. So we got SEMrush Sensor, Rank Ranger, Advanced Web Ranking, Cognitive, SERPworks, and Bright Local. So they all have SEO weather tools, and I've just normalized them and put them all on one graph.
Mm-hmm.
There's a baseline activity of volatility at the beginning. And then after the update, it returns to that baseline again. And that's the interesting thing, because when we see that, we know the start date of an update and we know the end date of an update. And that lets us run Korra reports. And if we have one from right before the update and we have a Korra report right after the update, and it's telling us, each Korra report is telling us what Google appears to favor in terms of factors, we can identify which factors moved up and which factors moved down over the span of the update. So we can do the movers and shakers and let people know what had changed. And so this gave us a very unique ability. Let me pull up one more. Let's see. So this gave us a unique ability to tease out clues of what specifically is happening in various updates. And oh, I need to go to Skype. This last one. I think it was 101.
Does this give an account for structured data as well?
Yes, it does. We'll even tell you which JSON LD entities you need to be competitive.
Interesting.
Does
it go in? Does it actually go into keyword count or any of that too?
Yes, and I'll show you that a little bit more. I'm trying to find the update analysis one I did. Couldn't be 103 because that we just did. Oh, it was probably episode 100. Yeah. So same graph I was just showing you. And then this concept of we pull a report from right before, we pull another report from right after, and then we find the movers and the shakers. So we found that these factors moved up in the rankings a lot. And so LSI keywords, entities went up a lot. Offpage went down.
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot lately.
A couple hot zones, like sentences in H2, and amount of content is generally up. And so we find this interesting because Google said this was the passage indexing update. So if they're looking at on-page sentences more and making that somehow count for more, using NLP and AI, then it makes sense that, special keywords like entities and LSI would matter. Sentences would matter. Your headings would matter. The amount of content you have would matter.
Matters, yeah.
So it all tells a story as to what was happening.
What you should really be concentrating on is what it winds up telling you.
Yeah, and so that's why I say,
And I mean, when I look at it, the first thing I notice is it's going to tell me if I'm going to put more time in on page or off page. I should probably do it in on page, not necessarily off page per se.
well,
When I think of off page, I'm specifically talking about backlinking and blogging on, wherever,
yeah, and it's not that the off-page stuff is bad or hurting you.
Yeah.
It just, it's just a little bit down where it was. Now,
Yeah.
over the course of, looking at the strongest factors, so these are the top 26 factors out of that 2050 I mentioned. Oops, sorry. Out of the 2050 I mentioned, being in the top 100, so those off-page ones might have moved to like, between 50 and 100. That's still really good when you consider it's out of 2,000 other factors. That's still top of the list. It's just not what moved as a result of the update. So the off-page stuff is still important, but this movement says what the update was kind of about.
Well,
and so this capability is obviously wildly popular. And so we started getting more into specific testing, like what else can we tease out of Google? And so we made a testing community where we do scientific SEO testing. And let me show that stuff. Let me clear some of this out of here.
I had one more question. He says, does it get the PBN links or pages which have blocked the robots from Ahrefs?
No, for the off-page data, we work through APIs, and you can pull the off-page metrics from either Ahrefs, SEMrush, or DOM Detailer. Okay. And Ahrefs data is the most popular right now.
Well, it's just very interesting. It's mainly because a lot of people, especially clients, they'll go, I want to get SEO, and they wonder how many backlinks are you going to be putting out there every month, and they think of SEO as just backlinks. I'm like, first thing we're going to do is your structure and look at the site and get all these things fixed and all your errors and page speed. And they're like, but I want backlinks. This proves exactly what we say most of the time. Get your structure right first.
So we made a community and we started doing testing to try to tease out even more clues. So we started staging web pages for the purpose of identifying how Google handles things.
Okay.
And so what we would generally do is we would create, like in a nutshell, like 5 pages. Let me minimize some of my windows here. We would create 5 pages, and let me use my other hand for the sake of the camera view. The virtual background. So we'd have, 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5 in the rankings. And these pages would rank for an imaginary keyword. And that keyword would be like, JLRJQQILMPSRTHM. And it'll be a universally unique keyword that no one in the universe has ever used before. When you search for it in Google, the only pages that can show up for it are those 5 pages we have. And we let them settle, and you go and you change page number 3. So it has a little room to go up and a little room to go down. And you do something to that page, and you see whether or not it goes up or down. And so that became single variable testing. That's the method that Kyle Ruth started doing.
Yeah, and then, I just talked to him the other day.
Yep. And so the method I do is similar to that, but I've taken it up to a ridiculous proportion.
Okay.
So what I have here is data from my version of a Kyle Roof test, where I'm running the experiment concurrently on 10 different websites. So we have site 1, site 2, site 3, site 4. So same experiment, same test cases, same controls, just deployed on different sites, so we can see how it happens on 10 different sites all at once.
Okay.
And so this kind of changed the game, because there is variation in the search results over time, and you never know if what you're looking at in terms of your rankings, whether it's for a test or in real life, it could be a lucky roll of the dice, and you don't normally rank that well. Could be an average roll of the dice. That's always where you rank. Could be an unlucky roll of the dice. Doesn't look good, but it's not usually like that. You know, so we kind of view rankings as a probability. And running the experiment 10 different times in parallel allows us to see that variance. And so this is a test for keyword density. And the crazy thing is, I don't know if you can read it, so I'll read it for the audience here, is how these were sorted after Google indexed them. So up at the top, we have 90% keyword density. Then we have a repeat of the 90%. So we did that test case twice. We doubled it up. And the reason we double them up is we like to see them cluster together. It gives us more confidence. The next one is 9% keyword density. It also clustered up. Then 7, then 8, then 7, then 6, then 8, then 6, then 5, then 5, then 4% density, then 3% density, then 2% density, and then all 10 control pages are 1% keyword density.
Wow.
That's pretty much sorted, you know, practically in descending order by keyword density.
Yeah.
And
this is all in Korra.
Well, the testing isn't.
Testing is on a testing platform, but this is all type of stuff you're doing in Korra as well.
Yeah, so we're using different techniques and different tools in order to learn about Google. And what we learned is that keyword density really is the thing. We thought for a minute, well, maybe it's not keyword density, maybe it's match count.
So if you were to say, what's the best amount of keyword density? Because you hear people throwing numbers around like 2%, 5%, you know, and then you got people that will just stuff the bejesus out of your keyword density. What would you say is the rank? What would the percentage be if you were going to say a percentage based upon what you've seen, based upon your results?
So there is a range. So whenever you hear a rule like, oh, your keyword density should always be 2.4%, you know, that is bound to be correct for a web page for some keywords. It is unlikely to be correct for your page and your keyword.
Across the board, across every website.
Yeah. So it always changes from keyword to keyword and web page to web page.
Yep.
You have to measure each and every time. Now, with that, you know, you can have, you know, 0% keyword density, and it stops being English when you get, you know, much past 12% keyword density. Because then it starts being, you know, DUI lawyer Los Angeles is willing to help you win your next DUI lawyer Los Angeles case. When you start getting, you know, beyond 12% keyword density, you lose grammar. So there's a practical limit. But the fact that Google will index and will prioritize keyword densities all the way up to 100% keyword density is remarkable. And it tells us how important it is. And we do this test. We repeat this test dozens of times every year, and it always tests this way. And the reason we do it is in our community of testers, when we get on a new tester, we want to make sure that they understand testing. So we have them test keyword density again. Retest density, we know what it should do. This will let us know if you're testing properly.
Okay.
And so it's amazing in the regard that if you make a mistake in an SEO test, the most common mistake you will make is accidentally tuning for keyword density. So you'll be like, well, I want to test for keywords in the heading. So I'm going to put my keyword in the heading, but it's also one time on the page elsewhere. But on this one case, I'll put it in the heading. Well, you can't do that. That one test case now has 2 keywords on it. It has a higher keyword density. Yeah. Instead of testing the heading, you're just repeating your keyword density test. And so that's the hard part of testing, is figuring out if you're actually testing the thing you think you're testing.
Yeah. So interesting.
And through that, we've discovered like so many amazing things. Like at one point in time, we wanted to see how many keywords could we get indexed on a single URL. Do you have any guesses as to how many keywords we got indexed?
I don't even know, because this one thing I just seen recently came out. Says Google now says that, what was it? What your meta title, basically stuffing your meta title does help you rank.
Yeah, it does.
And I was like, see, this is what I was like, y'all go from saying it doesn't to now Google wants to say it does. I said, half the time I think the best advice I can give someone is don't do the opposite of whatever Google's saying.
Or test.
Yeah, or just test it and see, because sometimes I just think they're trying to confuse everybody.
Yeah.
So it does matter. So you'll get these reports, and when I ask, and I tell people I don't even pay attention to this part, you'll get these reports, especially with SEO Power Suite and all of them. They'll say one of the warnings that will give you is your meta title's too long, because they want it to be where if it pops up that you could still read it, and it doesn't go beyond the area where you can read. And I told them, that's one of those things I don't even pay attention to, because I know it doesn't matter, for one, because I've seen it not matter. And then I've also seen where you go in there and you fix that and you make it to be, from, if you will, red or orange in Yoast to green, and then your rankings drop because you screwed around with the meta title and did what Yoast or they tell you to do. So
yeah,
that's interesting though. So you said it does help. So go ahead. How many did you try to rank based upon the title?
We tried to index a single URL for 1 million keywords. And the results were remarkable. So this is, like my days of ecom, this was a problem of scale, because how do you rank track 1 million keywords?
Oh, I can imagine, because I'm like rank tracker. If I have like 1,000 keywords, it's like takes days just to run the reports.
Yeah, so we had to devise statistical sampling methods where we sample from the million to find out where indexing is occurring. And what we saw is that, within 24 hours, we had the first 6,000 words of the document indexed in Google. So in 24 hours, the very top of the document, like in order, the first 6,000 at the top were indexed. By 48 hours, we got to 180,000 indexed keywords for the page, and then nothing after that. Google.
So how much content did you have on that page?
1 million keywords.
My God.
Now, what's even more funny about this thing?
That's just insane.
when we do testing, we like to minimize variables. So we like to try to make sure that we're only testing the thing that we're testing. And as a result, we tend to have these very thin test pages. And thin content is really hard to keep indexed in Google. Google doesn't like to keep it.
They don't like it. Yeah.
And so we're constantly battling getting our test pages to go in. When you give Google a 1,000,000 keyword page, Google loves it. Indexed it, it went in quickly, and it stayed in the whole time, even through
I have found that it's like, for example, you'll take a website only has on the homepage or a page in general 500 keywords and just write, let's say, 2,500 words of content, and good, not just content, but obviously good content. And then it just starts automatically ranking for multiple keywords. And like, what did you do? Did you throw some PBNs or whatever at him? Like, no, just put content. That's all, really. Content structure. That's it.
And that works. Like I was running some tests with an online retailer who sells gaming accessories, so wireless headsets for Xbox and things like that. And they had all of the, manufacturer and category keywords. So it's an Xbox, this model, wireless gaming headset. But those product pages were thin, and they were missing out on a lot of traffic. So all I did was create a hidden div on the page, and I created a list. Best wireless headset for Minecraft. Best wireless headset for Fortnite. Best wireless headset.
I've done that for another e-commerce client. I don't take on much e-commerce because I work with a guy named Kirk, and he does it, but that's his forte, not mine. But whenever we were doing headsets, it was like, best headset for iPhone, best headset for Android, best headset that eliminates noise and stuff like that. And, because usually has high buyer intent when they're looking for it. So.
Yeah, exactly. So you just put that somewhere on the page. It doesn't even need to be front and center, doesn't even need to be visible, and you'll start picking up traffic on those.
Interesting. So when you say doesn't need to be visible, because my background's black hat, so what? Explain, what do you mean not visible? Because there's not visibles.
There's a whole spectrum of white hat not visible to black hat not visible.
That's what I'm getting at. So what's white hat not visible?
White hat not visible is you have a tab box for your product info, and the fifth tab over has your list of related terms.
That's not visible to y'all. Okay. When I think of not visible, I mean it blends into the background, or CSS pushes it to the side.
Yeah.
Or it's behind an image.
There's a lot of fun ones like that. You could just do a display none div, but the problem with SEO text and hidden divs is that they're still read by screen readers. You are being cruel to the blind. And
that's why I don't like using some of that stuff, because I'm like, in my mind, how I think someone told me, said, why don't you just use CSS to, get rid of this stuff? Still have it there, but CSS and no one sees it. And I said, well, in my mind, I know Google sees the code, so, and in my mind, I'm going, Google's probably going to go, so why exactly are you trying to hide this off the screen? And it's going to throw an eyebrow up or a flag up, and then if it gets a manual read, you could get penalized for it.
Well, back when HTML comments used to work for SEO, which was only about a year ago, you could put in all of your words in HTML comments, and you tell Google why it's hidden in your code. Hey, Susie, I was thinking that we could get some content on why these headsets are the best headsets for this list of games. I've put it here in the source code for you to review. And now it's white hat. It's me leaving a message for Susie. On the black hat side of things, you could actually hide it in a display equals none div, and you can use the ARIA hidden attribute, set it equal to true, and screen readers won't read it. And the other thing retailers tend to care about is they don't want to see SEO text in the search results. So use the no snippet attribute as well on that div, and it won't be used in the search results summary. So that's the black hat side.
I get asked a lot because I do local SEO and we create the location pages. And I don't do quote unquote, I do, but I don't. Geo pages. Geo pages basically being, let me tell you about this area, which most people text, landmark, and roads, things like that, increase proximity. What I do is I basically list all the services on that page using H1 headers, H2 headers, using the city name or neighborhood. And then I have a whole stack for it. But basically in the bottom of it, I go to Google and I go neighborhoods in Google. I'm at neighborhoods in that area. It gives me every neighborhood in that area. And then I Gmap hyperlink every one of them to their Gmaps. Then below that, I go, okay, for example, things to do in Dallas, Texas. And Google tells me things to do in Dallas, Texas. So I put all that down there, and I've had people say, why don't you just hide it with CSS or whatever? I'm like, I don't bother with that. And the clients I work with, they don't care. As long as they get the rankings, they don't care. So that's why I'm always curious, because some people don't do that, don't do this, so. But it's curious. White hat versus black hat or whatever. To me, I just, whatever works.
You have to understand it all, because even if you aren't doing black hat, you're competing against black hat.
Yep. It's like I knew when someone started throwing black hat backlinks to me, because I noticed I went in my Google Analytics, I see my traffic jump out of nowhere, and I was like, the hell? And I mean, when I say jumped, I mean like insane amount. And then found that someone had been putting 2 press release websites to me, 301 redirecting them and all this. I was like, and if I hadn't known and been in black hat, I wouldn't have known what they were doing, what they were trying to do, that sort of thing. But, and then the thing, to me, I guess the way I look at it is, if you want, white hat's evergreen to me. Black hat's not evergreen. Black hat may work for a month. It may work for a week. It may work for years and go away, and then not work for a while and then come back. But evergreen is, it's going to always work. It may work less than it did before. It may work better now. But it's not going to change per se.
Well,
like this SEO structure to me is white hat. Technical SEO to me is white hat. So for me, it's like those things will always matter to me. It's like you're always going to need to have good on-page SEO.
Well, the truth is, and the history has been, whenever people outside of Google can control what ranks, Google doesn't like it. That becomes black hat.
That's black hat.
So technically, any SEO that works will eventually become black hat.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I usually talk about. Is like, for instance, Google doesn't like textual links, but Google has a patent on textual links. And essentially, all a Google pay-per-click ad is a textual link. It's a display ad with a text that's hyperlinked to a site. They don't like it because you're making money on it, and they are not. Really, and they know it works. So, I mean, I remember the days you had freaking ads all on the right-hand side, ads up top, ads on the bottom, everywhere, and they've kind of eliminated that pretty much. So,
yeah, very true. Let's see how are we doing on time? Or
we got about 15 more minutes if you want.
Oh, sure. Let's see, what else can we talk about? We should probably mention
So this tool, but the tool you're talking about, where could we go to actually purchase it or look at it, and trial version or anything like that?
There's no trial version,
Mm-hmm.
but if you just want to kick the tires on a report, just go to Fiverr, and there are people that are selling one-off Korra reports there.
Korra reports, okay.
Yeah, but if you want to find out more about the software, just go to my website, SEOtoollab.com, and there's a contact form there, so if you would like a guided tour, just contact me through that contact
you through that,
and I'm happy to schedule an hour and walk you through it and how it.
I'm just really interested in it because I mean that's the way I look at. Like I told you, I look at GMBs the same way. It's like there's a new tool a buddy of mine came out with, was GMB Crush, and it takes everybody's GMB and just goes, okay, what categories they have, how many posts do they have, how many words are in the description, how often are they uploading photos?
Yeah.
And literally I can go, okay, is the keyword and name in the title, how many, all that stuff. And then I'll have my own audit sheet, of course, and then I compare everything and say, okay, here's what we need to do and change, and make just some of those changes, and usually you're in the top 3 pack.
And that's one of those fundamentals of local we were talking about before the show is the completeness of the filling out all the data in the GMB. Most people get sick of it and they stop.
They just don't. It's like you'll go through most of them. Half the time when I get there, you don't even have a description. You don't have any payments and stuff. And they're like, well, I don't need to fill out. I'm like, think of it this way. Google is going, you have your GMB, you have your Google, you have the site that's attached to that. You have a Google site, you have publisher, you have Excel sheets, you got all these Google entities, and use them to the max, and tie them together. And if you're not going to use it to the max, then don't cry and moan when they're not going to rank you. So I mean, whenever we take on a GMB, that's what we do. We look at everything, and it's like they won't use, for instance, they won't use the Google site. And I'm like, I was like, for instance, I said, you can take that Google site and embed it in the back end page on your website, and now you have all your GMB posts. You could take your GMB posts and make them into an RSS feed. And most people don't realize that. And they're like, then take that information and put it on your website, because I'm taking, if you will, siloed content from a GMB and now placing it onto my website and tying that CID information together with my website and saying, yes, Google, this site is about this GMB, and tying them together. So,
yeah, and I did a little bit of testing with the map pack. At one point, I was looking at maybe creating Korra for local. And so I wanted to see what would be involved with that. And I very quickly realized that in local search, there's even 2 different algorithms for local. One is for when you click over to the maps from search, you get one set of results.
Yep.
But if you do the exact same keyword search from Google Maps, you get a different set of results.
Yep.
So, you'd have to optimize for both if you want to cover your bases.
And then you'll get people that, clients a lot of times will be like, well, whenever you run the search, I'm not found when I'm here, but when I'm at my office, I'm number 1. And I have to tell them, say, that's because you're at your office.
Yeah.
You're sitting right on top of your location. So I really do hope they find you, especially when it's based on proximity.
Yeah, proximity.
The number 1 factors is your proximity.
So the top factor there. Yeah, totally. And it's interesting how also in local search, this doesn't happen as much in the web side of things, but in local search, parts of your keywords may end up being converted into sorts and filters. So if you say, best Seattle plumber, best will become a rating sort. If you say, pizza restaurant, near me, Pizza becomes a filter, taking, which, restaurants to show. They actually kind of take it out of the keyword context and put it into those other dimensions. And that's really unique to local. But yeah, that's very, very complicated. I'd say the local SEO is the hardest SEO in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people think like, for instance, local SEO is easiest.
No.
I've heard them. I said I can rank. I mean, honestly, I've had websites that I can rank for a term in a few days or a few weeks. But then on local SEO, it's a whole nother ball game. It's not.
Yeah. And the absolute best SEO exploits are in local. Whenever there's someone that says, "Hey, you want to be number one in 5 minutes?" It's always a local SEO guy.
Yeah, and it's, and I have people like, for example, CTR, click-through rate manipulation and everything. So, and I was just talking to someone, they're like, with that, they're like, I was throwing 200, I forget, like 800 views or something. They threw 800 views at their website and it wasn't ranking. Nothing was changing. And I said, well, let me ask you something. Did you go to your Google Search Console? And I said, no. I was like, okay. So that's the first step you did wrong. How many views were you getting prior to this? About 800. I said, you shouldn't have done that. I was like, you basically just told Google, hey, I doubled my traffic in less than 24 hours. And Google's going to go, no, you didn't, you moron. They're not, you got to gradually do it, not just boom and dump everything on it at one time.
Well, Googlebot is also tricking people who are doing CTR, or not Googlebot, sorry. Google is tricking people who are doing CTR manipulation because they position test your ranking. So say you're number 10, part of the time they're going to say, well, let's test them at number 6 and see if their performance metrics improve. Oh, no, it didn't. So let's put them down at 20 and see if they stay the same. And so if you're just throwing CTR on your link every time, you might actually tell Google that you perform better at a lower ranking.
Wow. Yeah, so I tell people when we're doing CTR, it's slow and steady.
Well, you got to check CTR at the same or better position. If Google shows you one lower, don't click it.
Yep. And then on top of it, it's like CTR will help you get there. There are people that will go, well, let me take micro workers, or let me take, in this case, let me take 100, 200 cell phones, whatever, and go into an area and do CTR manipulation. Those CTRs, not in my opinion, I just don't see how you think it's going to stick. You're going to come into an area, put a bunch of views on it, and then it's going to do the Google dance. And then it may stick up there for a few weeks or maybe a month or so, but it's going to fall if you don't have natural traffic going to it.
Yeah, so you're going to send a signal to Google that, hey, I'm trending right now. And then you're going to, when you stop,
untrend, and they're going to drop you back down again. And this is why I tell people all the time, you got to make it look natural. And then you make it look natural. And eventually, while you're making it look natural, it will actually get natural traffic. And then it will stick, versus you just, let me throw some spaghetti on the wall and hopefully it'll stick for at least a little bit, and then it'll fall off.
Yeah, evergreen has constant demand.
Yep.
And if you go to high peak to nothing, Google's not going to think you're evergreen. They're going to say, okay, this is old news. We can evict it. And you got to be careful with that too.
I mean, we'd use it, but it's just, I tell people, for instance, first thing I'm like, fix your errors on your website, all the technical stuff, fix your structure, fix your content. Then I'll do with local pages, and I do my stacks. And then after all that stuff, if I start plateauing, then I'll do some other stuff, some off-page stuff, and then I'll get into CTR if I have to. I don't go first thing. Yeah, most of them they're like, oh, just do CTR first thing, you know.
Well, before you do any of that, look at the targeting.
Yeah.
Like I had one client who had an e-commerce category called gifts and delights.
Mm.
When was the last time you or anyone searched for gifts and
delights?
What the hell is a delight anyway? So we changed that category name. We just renamed the category to unique gift ideas.
Yeah, that's more likely.
And it went from 0 organic traffic to some organic traffic. And when you do that to all of your pages site-wide, you take them from 0 to non-zero traffic, that's a big amount. I did it for one client, turned all of his 0 visitors per month into 1 visitor per month or more across 1,500 pages. That's 1,500 shoppers into his store extra every month.
It's a lot like me, because a lot of people, they concentrate on, I only want these 5 keywords, and I hate when people do that. It's because it's like, well, you could have these 5 keywords ranked, but how about if I get you ranked for 3,000 keywords?
Well, and the easy way to negotiate it is, I can get you to rank for a small handful of keywords that's going to be expensive and probably have terrible ROI, or I can help you maximize the number of shoppers in your store. Take your pick. There's one they want, and there's one they really shouldn't want, but they don't.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I said, you may, let's say you put all your effort in those keywords. I said, yeah, it's competitive, and let's say you get even 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 views. But if I get 3,000 keywords, and all of them get 10 views a month, I just beat the holy crap out of you going after for 1 keyword versus me. I got 3,000 keywords, each of them getting 10 views a month, so.
And there's always these businesses out there that are like, well, if I get your package, are you going to rank me for payday loans? And, there's always this implied thing of, that if you're any good, why aren't you ranking #1 for payday loans? Well, I'll tell you why. Because you can't win payday loans with a 3-month contract. Do you go to your investment banker and say that you want a 5-year return on a 3-month investment? If you're not telling your banker that, then why are you telling me to do the exact same thing? If you want to sign up for 5 years of SEO so that we can catch up on all the link building we've missed out on and all the competitive research we've missed out on, we can get you there. But we cannot just with a 3-month contract give you parity with 10 years of somebody else's work. That's just not how that works.
Yeah. That's what a lot of times they just expect. That's honestly the hardest part of being an SEO is people think it's a miracle pill. It's going to work overnight, and it's almost this long game. It's not going to usually work overnight. I mean, you can do some things that will get you ranked overnight, but I rather do long game that's going to be around for years to come versus it'll be good for a week, a month, 2 months, a year even.
Yeah. And crazy enough, I've been in this business long enough that I've seen my white, my tidy whitey white hat SEO stuff, and I've seen my really dirty black hat SEO stuff. It largely all works. And it's all still indexed. It's all still ranking.
I just listened to Craig, and he was talking about it too. He's like, he can't, because some things that come out, it's like, they hate this and they hate that. And it's like, and Craig's like, this is all crap. I can't even believe they'd even say that crap. It's like, I believe almost anything that I hear anymore, but I always tell people test. Just because someone says it works, it doesn't mean it will work. Test it and see if it does.
Well, when you start proving things for yourself, you get this unique ability to cut through the crap quickly because you learn some truths. And
Yep.
when you see a blog post, when you see a speaker violate one of those truths that you have proven for yourself,
Yep.
you know to stop reading. You know to
Yep.
stop listening.
Yeah, that's what Thomas. I've listened to a handful of people, and that's about it anymore. So, because I have people just come in and say, like in GMB, this is one of the biggest ones. In GMB, the category, or no, not just the category, the name of your GMB, the title, doesn't matter. It is not a ranking factor. I was like, are you full of shit? Because I have literally taken a GMB, changed just the title, just add in the city, or if you will, the keyword, and it ranks literally within the week. It's only factor. And yet you'll get these people in there saying, oh, doesn't matter, doesn't work. It's like, really? You know, how many GMBs have you actually worked on? You know, so, but it's a lot of it out there, but it's all good.
Yeah,
But
I did a test on my own GMB. I keyword stuffed the heck out of it because I too wanted to see if it was a factor.
Yep.
And then we found out Google's game. When you create a GMB and they phone verify it, they're selling your information to lenders. You become their product.
Yep.
Because when I keyword stuffed that GMB, the next thing I got in the mail was a pre-qualified business loan for $500,000, and they gave me the Visa loan card, and there it is, printed, embossed on the Visa loan card, my business name with my keyword stuff. So they sold me to the lender.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I bet you didn't know that GMB is Google's black hat as hell lead gen system.
It's definitely a lead gen system for them. So then they definitely make money off it. That's just tell people. They think their GMB is going to go away one day. I tell them, say, nope. GMB makes too much money off of it. If GMB was to do anything, I said they're already starting to put ads in it. And they're already positioning people higher with ads. Would they necessarily get rid of it unless it's a paid version? I don't think so, because I know, like what you're talking about, they're already making money off of people that are listing their GMBs by selling the information to other people.
Yep.
And retargeting. So, but listen, it's been good talking to you. I got to get off here, and I'm pretty sure you're probably busy. It's getting late where you're at, but
yeah, it's my bedtime. It's late.
Yeah. I appreciate it. It's 1:30 p.m. here. So hey, get good. We'll have you on again. I appreciate it, Ted.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good one.
You too.